it's a very dangerous thing if you reduce conversion rate optimization to getting a better usability, so making it easier to use, so to say. But let's say creating a more convincing flow and journey that requires a deeper understanding of the psychology of your users and the needs. When I heard conversion rate optimization, I didn't like the term in itself because actually, are we really optimizing conversion rates or are we optimizing the digital experience? And then as a consequence, we measure the improvement of the experiments in numbers, meaning in conversion rates. So I think that the optimization focus actually is the digital experience. So we make digital experiences better. That's our intention. We want to make it better. So for the sake of later on, as a consequence, having better conversion rates and more revenue or more leads whatsoever. But anyway, I arrived too late to this playground. So the term CRO was already born. So it's conversion rate optimization. When you talk to people about conversion rate optimization, I heard things like, conversion rate optimization is not so much for us. We are not a retailer. I said, okay, all right. So what are you? No, we use our website for our B2B brand building whatsoever. Okay, so your website has a purpose, right? Yes. So what is the purpose? And the more you discuss that into that direction, you find out that conversion as such is widely wrong, let's say, understood. Conversion is converting something into something else. So there is not one conversion rate. There are multiple steps in it. And also it's not necessarily transactional. So you don't necessarily have to buy something. It's whether it is lead generation, whether it is ad impressions, whether it is purchases, or just the time spent on your site to create engagement and to build your brand. Everything can be a conversion. That always starts with a visit somehow, and then you generate something else
into
out
something
of
else, changing the status.
Exactly. Yeah. The very first step before even starting to think about testing is, okay, what are the ultimate goals and the goals before the final goal on your website? What is the purpose of your website? And then you can optimize towards this goal.
Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to another episode of The Link, E-Commerce Connections. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Jan Marks. So Jan, he's the director for Europe and Latin America for Visual Website Optimizer, who are the leading company for A/B testing and conversion rate optimization. We're going to be talking about more than conversion rate optimization. We're going to be talking about actually a subject that he likes a lot, that is experience optimization. Hello, Jan. How are you?
Hi, Diego. I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Please, thank you very much for joining us. So, Jan, like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit broader than a conversion rate optimization. We're going to be talking about experience optimization, actually optimization in general. But before we dive deep into our topic, I found the first time that we met and we had this conversation, I found it really, really interesting how you came to be who you are now in the conversion rate optimization world. And even before you started working with conversion rate optimization as a practitioner, because by the way, before being the director for Visual Website Optimizer, he was a practitioner in an agency. But I found it very interesting, and I would like you to tell our audience, how was it a glass of wine and a conversation got you into this world?
Yeah, actually, it was a couple of glasses of wine, or even it was an evening on our terrace with some very good friends, and one of them was the co-owner of Multiplica United States, so one of the larger digital agencies. And after the first bottle, I think it was that we started talking about what he was doing and how he was doing, and he was doing actually very great. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he explained it to me, and immediately I found it really a fascinating world, conversion rate optimization. I could never understand that out of 100 people who visit a website, 99 people walk out without buying anything, By the way, if you do the same in a physical store, it's around 50% of the people who walk out have something that they bought.
Oh, really? 50%?
And I never understood
I didn't know that.
It is. Yeah, in branded offline environment, it's around 50%. So if you go to Massimo Dutti and you can stay at the entrance, you can count, and every second person has a something with them. So, but Nico explained the basic concept of conversion rate optimization to me, and I really liked the idea. Although I didn't like the title. So conversion rate optimization seems to be a little bit technocratic. I don't know. I found it amazing, let's say, making digital experiences better in the sense of more enjoyable, but also better in the sense of more effective for the, let's say, from the business point of view. And well, he gave me a couple of examples, and I was just amazed by it. And at the end of the evening, after the third bottle of wine or something like that, it was not only him and myself, there were multiple friends. He said, "You want to join us?" And I said, "Well, why not? Give me an idea." So that is how I stumbled into conversion rate optimization, and it became my passion, you could say.
And Jan, tell me, because I'm curious, like, for someone who had never had any contact with conversion rate optimization, how does this friend of yours, Nico, explain it to you? Do you remember what was kind of paraphrasing what he said that really caught your attention?
Well, it was two things he explained very well. I mean, first of all, what we just said. I mean, if 99% of the people leave your website without having done what you expected them to do, there's something wrong, right? So what is it? He didn't find the product he was looking for. He was bored by the texts, too much text of it, and or the journey was just too long. There are millions of reasons for it. And so, I mean, as a consumer, it is very easy to understand. I mean, let's face it. I mean, it really sucks. I mean, buying online really sucks still. I mean, can you imagine there's this good analogy. If you transfer what you have to do to buy something online and you move that into a supermarket or a real bricks and mortar store where you go to, let's say, you want to pay and then you have to register. Then she's asking you a million of questions and your address and this and that and so on and so on. So it's really an annoying experience altogether still nowadays. And this, together with the fact that you don't have a human being in front of you, makes it even more annoying. And that was the obvious part. He then also explained a little bit, how do you do this? How do you make things better? And then he explained some underlying concepts of A/B testing, which I still remembered. I had seen it in different parts of it, but I mean, you modify something on the website, send 50% of the traffic to each version and see which one works better, right? And so the experimentation part was really also equally fascinating because it's data-driven business development, and I really like that. That was basically the start, yeah, you could say.
That sounds very, very fun. Actually, that evening sounded like a very fun evening.
It is, and we still have the same. Yeah, exactly. So this was a group of former employees from my first role in Spain, and we're still very good friends, and meet once a year at least to discuss these things.
Well, my hope, maybe one evening you can invite me. I love wine.
Happy to do so. Yeah, you would enjoy the company, I can tell you.
Definitely. So let's fast forward a couple of years, and now you pass from this agency where you, as I understand, you actually applied that conversion rate optimization knowledge to your own customers using tools such as Visual Website Optimizer. Yeah. Right. And then you crossed the border to being the director of Visual Website Optimizer of such a powerful conversion rate optimization tool or A/B testing tool such as Visual Website Optimizer. Before going deep into actually the first question, what conversion rate optimization really is and what's the difference between all the confusion that it's around, what were your learnings in that process? What was things that you can remember that you can think about like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this from transferring from someone who knew nothing about it to someone who started learning and actually applying it to now someone that's helping lead the market within those tools?
Well, in my first role, my former role at Multiplica, at this agency, I learned a lot about the combination of three things as a crucial thing. So it's the combination of, let's say, a proper optimization process, then the right people that work inside this process, and then the supporting technology. If one of these three components fails, you're not running an effective optimization program. You're testing a bit, or you're trying to improve certain things, but this is not systematic conversion rate optimization or experience optimization. So that was really interesting to see, let's say, how well it worked whenever these things came together, and great technology and a couple of good people, highly motivated, work in a defined, efficient process. So there was not rocket science, actually. It was a lot of common sense in it, right? So that was one thing. Then I learned a lot about data-driven businesses and non-data-driven businesses. I was surprised to see that still a lot of companies, large brands, by the way, were let's say the managing director says, I think we should paint everything in blue, right? So, we should write more explanations here, right? So they all just
because
define, because it's much better, because I like this much better, and so on. So there's still a lot of really, really big companies. I'm talking here about airlines, banks, insurances, all these companies. I mean, they're partly driven by individual subjects, let's say, egos. Yeah. Alpha managers, I don't know. And that's the beauty of testing and experimentation. The moment that data kicks in without a big project, then suddenly the things change, right? So then even the hippo in the room, that they understand that there is more behind it. Maybe users act differently or think differently. So that was really important. Also, one basic take that I take away from many optimization programs, and it is again and again, there is a certain when people start optimizing, they start changing things or adding things. I don't know why, but the biggest effect you normally has, we often saw when we take away things, we hide things, we cut off things, we reduce things. So we go back to simplicity. And since this is very, very easy, it takes sometimes a couple of minutes. And then you see suddenly, oh, wow, by not showing this and that, I'm increasing my click-through rate, I'm reducing my bounce rate, I'm improving my conversion rate. So this was also interesting to see. We like simple things, obviously.
Yes, definitely. And tell me, Jan, let's go back to the roots. Like, what conversion rate optimization is, as opposed to, like you mentioned, experience optimization, and also usability. I see many people that kind of tends to confuse all of those terms together, right? And that kind of lurks the waters where you wanna see, when you want to try and bring clarity, people, because you mentioned the teams, you mentioned the processes, you mentioned the tools. So when you try to consolidate all of those together, there's a lot of noise. So what are the differences, and what is really conversion rate optimization?
Well, first of all, when I heard conversion rate optimization, I didn't like the term in itself, because actually, are we really optimizing conversion rates, or are we optimizing the digital experience? And then as a consequence, we measure the improvement of the experiments in numbers, meaning in conversion rates. So I think that the optimization focus actually is the digital experience. So we make digital experiences better. That's our intention. We want to make it better. So for the sake of later on, as a consequence, having better conversion rates and more revenue or more leads whatsoever. But anyway, I arrived too late to this playground. So the term CRO was already born. So it's conversion rate optimization. But let's clarify two terms in it, which one is conversion and the other one is optimization. So when you talk to people about conversion rate optimization, I heard things like, conversion rate optimization is not so much for us. We are not a retailer. I said, okay, all right. So what are you? No, we use our website for our B2B brand building whatsoever. Okay, so your website has a purpose, right? Yes. So what is the purpose? And the more you discuss that into that direction, you find out that conversion as such is widely wrong, let's say, understood. Conversion is converting something into something else, right? So the first thing I always say that you convert is you convert a visitor into a user, right? Because the visitor comes to your site and might go away. The moment that he starts using your website, so you already register, you could register your first engagement, your first conversion. You convert a visitor into a user. That's measurable. You can measure that. And the moment he starts browsing, searching, clicking, and so on, so you already made it. First conversion is there. It's not your final one. Then you create, let's say, you might convert a user into let's say, a basket. So you have a user that who's actually about to buy. So you make from a user of the website someone who is about to purchase. So you could call it prospect or whatever. So it's another conversion.
Let me just interrupt, just a parenthesis. A basket for the US audience, it's a cart, basically.
It's a cart, yes.
In Europe, they call it basket.
Exactly, yeah, right. So you convert a user into a prospect who is about to buy something on your website. And then ultimately you might convert this prospect or this cart into a purchase. So there is not one conversion rate. There are multiple steps in it. And also it's not necessarily transactional. So you don't necessarily have to buy something. Maybe it is your conversion. We have, for instance, a client, it's a media player. So what is the goal of the website? That's always the first question. Before you think about optimizing, you need to understand optimizing towards what. So here it is, their business model is basically based on ad impressions and page impressions. So actually your conversion is a visitor to a number of pages visited, right? Because this drives your numbers and this is your revenue model. So it's whether it is lead generation, whether it is ad impressions, whether it is purchases, or just the time spent on your site to create engagement and to build your brand. Everything can be a conversion. That always starts with a visit somehow, and then you generate something else
into
out
something
of
else, changing the status.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is it. And so when you hear about conversion rate optimization, I think it's the very first step before even starting to think about testing is, okay, what are the ultimate goals and the goals before the final goal on your website? What is the purpose of your website? And then you can optimize towards this goal, right? Yeah, that explains the C in crawl.
Before moving on, so basically, if I understand correctly, what you're saying, it's also being able to define the macro conversions that maybe it's a transaction, right? From the micro conversions that leads to the transaction. Correct?
That's true. Yeah, exactly. There are multiple steps, not necessarily lined up in a row, but there are different things that you need to achieve first, conversions that you need to achieve first before you have you achieve your final ultimate goal. That's true. And there can be multiple. Sometimes you want to generate leads, you want to generate sales, you want to generate brand recognition and engagement. So that's very common. So it's not limited to, e-commerce, they started first. They really went heavily into A/B testing, I think. E-commerce and travel sites as well. I think Amazon was one of the first superheroes of experimentation. And Booking.com, same thing. I had a chance to talk to the head of experimentation at Booking.com of the early days one day. It was really interesting to see how they built the entire company based on experimentation. So everything you see on Booking.com is like it is because they keep testing it and changing it accordingly.
Well, and actually, you're touching a very important subject about conversion rate optimization, and that it's experimentation. And this is something that I think that I really believe, and I want to know if you share this thought. And it's about the importance of the speed of experimenting, and like not making it much of a hurdle to make experiments. And experiments shouldn't be like a whole
project,
6 month exactly 6 month project.
Yeah.
And it's just like do it,
Yeah.
experiment it, like put it to the test, right? Challenge it.
Yeah. I mean, we analyzed it very deeply at BWO one time. What were the key patterns of really successful optimization programs where the company really achieved breakthrough growth? And the number one driver by far was the speed of experimentation,
Okay.
the number of experiments you run every week, every day, let's say. And this can only be achieved if you have an underlying, as I said, process, people, and altogether also a bit of experimentation culture in that. The experimentation field is, I think, something that there's still a longer way to go, especially here in Europe, because trying out things is somehow against properly planned engineering, right? We build this that way. Here it is. Take it, right? And then in 3 years, we rebuild another one, or things like that. This ongoing agile process is still lacking in a lot of industries in Europe, I would say.
Process, and also what is it? And also mindset, and like you mentioned, culture, right? Because experimenting means like failing. And failing fast, right? And people often many companies don't like to fail. And actually, when you see successful companies, is that they failed more times, so they know what hasn't worked in the past.
We had a retailer as a customer, and they celebrated once per month in a general meeting of all employees the biggest winner and the biggest fuck up in experimentation. They really called it like that. Fuck up of the month. So I don't know if I can say this word in the American internet, but it was really like this. So it was there was let's say kind of gamification in it. They really celebrated a huge idea that had a tremendous impact in numbers at some point, but also the most funny, totally failed experiment, which also gave a good learning sometimes, right? So this open mind set, that's also something that you have. But the culture of experimentation has become kind of a buzzword in our industry as well. You need a culture of experimentation. Yeah, okay, right. But you also need to engineer the process of optimization, the prioritization, then the design, development, QA, and analysis. So this cycle, you need to build this, and the culture in itself comes like on the fly. I think nobody can really define or set up a culture. I mean,
but you need a place to start, right? You need a trigger, right? To start putting together those processes, that team. Because I'm thinking about you need a team. It's not a one-man's job, right?
Exactly. You start something, and then I think the culture of experimentation grows if the management perceives the result of the these first steps and sponsors it and supports it, gives some space to it, and so on and so forth. And what we've seen the more you do this and the quicker you do it, the more responsive also the C-level reacts to it. And say, this is great. This is amazing, right? Initially, you might have reactions like that. Why should we try something else? I mean, the website was built 3 months ago. Why should we change it now, right? But
why not?
You meet this less and less, I would say. So people now we have a lot of let's say accounts which acquired VWO or started using VWO in the process of the redesign already, and they know that that it's the right moment to start with it. The earlier, the better. So optimization for me, the second part, or the third letter in CRO, it's also something that led to a lot of misunderstanding. So it's not about making things better, right? It's a systematic, ongoing process, and if that is something that is, we see very often that people say they do conversion rate optimization, but they actually don't. They run a couple of tests from time to time before they make something, change something on the side. But this ongoing search, systematic search, analysis, gathering all your observations and transforming them into hypotheses, and then prioritizing the most promising hypotheses from that, putting them on your list for the next optimization sprint, and then getting it done, run the quality assurance, and then look into the results and then start over again. So this process is something, if you do not have these dynamics, these momentum in it, I think it's A/B testing what you do. Yeah, you could do A/B testing, but it's not yet conversion rate optimization, right?
So, and because we find this in many of our clients, right? That they have this difficulty of where should we start. Of course, we as an agency, we guide them. I like to call it, we handhold them like where to start. But if you had to explain to someone, let's say an e-commerce merchant, where to start this conversion rate optimization journey or experience optimization journey, what would you say?
Well, we ask ourselves quite a lot. We ultimately used a lot a framework that we created, which is a framework of 8 crucial experiences. So we kind of cut the user experience into slices or into its most important parts, so to say. And these 8 experiences are, number 1 is the arrival experience, is the first 5 seconds on your site. That's pretty easy to simulate and to find out what's going wrong there. Then the second one is the search experience. When people arrive on the site and start searching, the way you search, the way you can sort and filter and so on. We can learn a lot from mega searches there. The third one is the navigation experience. So if you don't search, you might navigate between categories and you click on elements and so on. It's the art of never getting lost. Number 4, one of my favorites, probably the biggest one, is the information experience. That's normally the biggest field where companies tend to put too much, not in the right structure. You don't have the pyramidal information structure that is easy to digest. We still see a lot of websites where there's not the right balance between images and text, especially on mobile. So the information experience is a big playground. Number 5 is the decision experience. That's something that nobody likes so far. So this is what typically what people tend to say. Oh, I'm going to talk to my wife, or I'm going to have another look somewhere else, and then and so on. It's trying to avoid that they walk away and drive a decision towards something, helping them, avoiding the paradox of choice. And then number 6 is, now it's getting worse and worse. Number 6 is even worse than deciding. It is about the checkout. Everybody hates to check out. It's a disaster. I mean, you have to register, then they ask you for all kinds of things, and then you're given your postcode, and the system doesn't accept it because it's not a valid postcode, and you have to go back, and terrible, right? I mean, one word. If you survive that particular experience, you get to experience number 7, which is even worse. It is when you have to take out your credit card. And that is the payment experience. A disaster. Very often suddenly you stare at a white screen with, give me your credit card number, give me your name, give me your expiry date, and let me get all your money, right? So that is a crucial thing where you really need to test and try out for your, let's say, brand the right way, how you can create trust and build a really, let's say, this atmosphere of it's all is fine. We have a very good return policy. There is a no risk. There's a total refund, whatever. And then number 8 is it's transversal. It's the support experience. Also, one of my favorites is when you walk into a store, when you want to buy something, in a physical store, and then you have these hyperactive salesperson who approaches you after 10 seconds and says, "Can I help you, sir? Would you like to do this? Would you like to try that? Would you like?" No, I don't want to do this. I want to straw the eyes and I want to, let's say, find some things. Look for something I like, and then later on at the right moment when I start looking around at the store and I try to find someone who might be able to find my size of this shirt that I like, right? Then I need help, but not a bot that comes at me all the time. "Hello, I'm Lisa, I'm your bot, I'm here to help," and then ask me all the stupid questions. That makes it absolutely clear that this is a stupid bot. So support. Wonderful thing, how to destroy business if you don't do it properly. So you can imagine you do a great job on all the 7 things that I mentioned before. You worked on the flow. It's beautiful, right? And then at the last moment,
you throw
bam, you see a bot. Can I do something for you, right? So yeah, and these 8 experiences. I mean, it's a simple thing, but for us it helped us. What we found out is if of all these 8 things, you miss on 1 or 2 or more. Now, if you miss on 1, normally it's hard to make it really effective. So there's always something. I mean, not every website needs a search experience, because if you have a single product website, you might not need it. But most websites do have it. And so if one of them really totally fails, then it's like in a chain, and all the other rest can be as good as you want, but you're not going to see the results that you hope to see. So what we say there is, let's create a roadmap. Let's look at briefly, touch on all these 8 things and brainstorm, let's say, deal with it 1 hour each, right? That's 1 working day.
Yeah.
So you bring together 5 people and a whiteboard, and then you start scribbling things down that relate to number 1, number 2, number 3, number 8, and so on. So that is a good.
So it shouldn't be that complicated. It's just putting some order to it and just getting started, and you'll also figure it out as you go, right?
Yes, and we used this when I was still at the agency, and it was really a big success because of this. Let's say this: if you stare at your website and you can change so many things, you need something, and it's better to do it this way than going by page. Right. So starting with your home page and then starting with your product detail page and so on. Slip into the shoes of your customer. He is living these 8 experiences. And there are a number of psychological questions you need to ask in every single step.
Well, that's a topic that I personally love, right? Psychology, how data and psychology kind of like tools change, market changes, like everything changes, but basic psychology remains the same for the last 10,000 years, right? Like what makes people click are the same things. So that knowledge about your customers, it's vital. And what we see many times is that people build their sites for themselves, not for their customers, right? They lack that research to understand, like, apart from this general things that make all people trigger, how can I adapt that for my own target audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's surprising if you talk to brands that and about certain psychological, let's say, issues on their side, and so they understand it, but they are surprised that their own team was just dealing with usability or design questions, right? So usability, you mentioned the term. Just to add on this, it's a very dangerous thing if you reduce conversion rate optimization to getting a better usability, so making it easier to use, so to say. But let's say creating a more convincing flow and journey that requires a deeper understanding of the psychology of your users and the needs. Talking about psychology also is something that still surprises me a lot, is around the subject of personalized user experiences. So a lot of, let's say, experiments that our more advanced clients run are focusing on, let's say, what if we change the experience for a specific target group in a certain way. And to me, it's really surprising how many big brands still do not personalize the experience, right? So, for instance, if you browse, you should do it really. Browse a couple of airlines and search for a flight, 2 adults, 2 kids, 2 weeks, right? So what is that? A business traveler? No, it's not a business traveler, right? So it's family. It shouts out vacation, right? Yeah. So, and then after you've done that, browse the site a little bit everywhere and so on. The site doesn't shout out, enjoy your holidays. The site talks about business class, which is completely redundant at this moment. I mean, there are not many people will book for the kids. I mean,
but they place your name, and that's why people think that personalization is just putting headline, first name, right? And that's it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. So, but let's say it's so. I find it still surprising. It's so easy to adjust the user journey the moment that I know something about someone, to rearrange things on my website so that I speak to this someone, right? And I only show things that this someone might be interested in. And it's very often it's not happening. And it's much easier than people think. Much easier. So there's a lot of
that is a great example about the business trip.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we all know the Amazon example, right? So people who purchase this have also purchased that. So that's a simple one of a recommendation engine. But with, let's say, thinking about the momentum of let's say of the psychological rules, and you know that there is somebody who is expecting certain things because he is after a certain thing. So it's a little bit more than recommendation engines. It has become a buzzword. Personalization was, I think it was first mentioned 16 years ago or something like that. Still, large brands do not do this. So I don't know why. It's not complicated.
Yeah,
actually.
No, I know, and it's different to personalize a journey than to personalize a web page or an email, right? That's not personalization. That's just adding a person's name there. Yeah, no, I totally get it, and I love that example. I'm going to use it, by the way.
Yeah, totally. Feel free. Great.
Jan, we talked about those processes where to start the 8 experiences that you mentioned.
Yes.
And we also talked about, you mentioned team, right? How to put together a team. And when you gave that example of the 8 experiences, getting into the whiteboard and starting, drawing and analyzing your site as a whole, you mentioned that team. So I would like to dig a little bit deeper on what are the skill sets that need to come into that same room or Zoom meeting, whatever the company's working nowadays, to make sure that we're listening to the right people, or at least considering the right skill sets or disciplines to make sure that we're optimizing as we should, right? Because many companies do not have a conversion team, right, or an optimization team.
Yeah, so very few companies.
Very few companies. And there's the other option, such as agencies. Actually, we do that for our companies. But just to get started, this is my thought. I don't think that to get started, to realize that you need to start to optimize, you need that whole huge team. And I'm sure also that just digging a little bit deeper, I don't know, maybe the guy that sees your analytics or the guy that, sends the emails, all those people coming together. Do you agree that they would make that a good first start for that team?
Yeah. Yes. I would say, I mean, you should not wait until you have the perfect optimization team. That's more a process. It's a journey. What I do believe is, well, first of all, somebody needs to own it initially as a start, so to say, and this person needs to ideally, I think, he can come from more from the analytical side, but I personally see it's more effective if somebody who's deeply in love with the website itself and the customer happiness, right? So, but the first criteria is somebody who owns that. You mentioned skill set. It needs to be someone who's properly organized. So he needs to be. He doesn't have to have the formal title of a project manager, but he should have the capacity to, let's say, manage an ongoing thing properly, right? So if you're just creative, right, then you lose the discipline of getting things done, right? If you are too technical, you're losing all the basic idea of making things better, right? So the creative part of it. So the ideal owner of it is a person that is respected, that is friendly, has a lot of social intelligence, and is to a certain degree organized. So let's say if you have to decide between the introverted analytics guy who is a little bit doesn't like to speak with others, right? Then don't make him suffer. So find someone who loves to talk with his colleagues, get other people on board, invite people, do not deal with this as a closed shop, and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. It's also, if you choose somebody like this, you will also make sure that he will never be the lonesome wolf, which is the secure concept for failure in conversion rate optimization. If he is the manager conversion rate optimization, this always rings an alarm bell. So what are you doing? I'm in charge for conversion rate optimization. Ooh. I said, well, yeah, okay, might be fine. And who else, right? So who's in your team? So I believe you're right. It's something it needs to start somewhere. And ideally, I always encourage new customers at BWO to, as quickly as possible, build let's say, a small team. Doesn't have to be huge. And this critical skill sets is if you have somebody who knows something about UX, that helps a lot. Somebody who knows about data. So the analytics guy is a valuable resource. Somebody who knows a little bit about development also helps, because there are experiments that require a couple of lines of code, right? And then you might have, almost, I would say these are the three critical skills, right? On top of it, as I said, is the project management skill overall to make things happen, which can be taken by any of these three.
So summarizing, conversion rate, technical,
yeah,
and analytical. Okay.
Yeah. Well, look, conversion rate. Normally you don't have a conversion rate guy, but you have someone who's in charge for UX, right? So, there's a fourth one that I see very often, which is the content manager. Now, content manager actually should be part of it, and it's not. You don't see him always, because sometimes, let's say, the content manager. I mean, the developer. Everybody needs the developer, right? So that is why it's an important guy, right? Analytics is also important because the analytics guy very often has to talk to the boss, right? So he's also important. The creative guy is important because people like what he's drafting and so on. It's all the new thing and so on. And the poor content guy is putting all the wonderful things on the website and writing product descriptions and picking, let's say, dealing with photographers to get images on the site and so on and so forth. So these content people also are a valuable resource in it, also because encouraging them to test their content is also something that we've learned in the past, but what we call micro testing. Test every headline, test every copy, and learn from what your users tell you. Yeah, I think that would be the critical skills, and you need to. Which again, it does not mean that you can't do it if you don't have, let's say, the necessary resources, what I hear quite often. That's bullocks. You can start with one person. Absolutely. You can start. You can build a company like us, for instance. We offer our clients, almost all clients have a dedicated customer success manager. This guy becomes a co-pilot. And especially at the beginning, it's this person and one person at the client. So they start to build the first roadmap, right? So they engage. Very often, and I don't say that for the sake of becoming even better friends, Diego, is an agency.
They already are.
Yeah. Well, it's an agency. I mean, I always hear, well, our budget and so on and so forth. But it is bullocks, because you win so much speed and focus if you have work with an agency that knows something about conversion rates, that the first months will deliver, let's say, will pay the bill.
According to your research, actually, you would be sacrificing the number one reason for success, as you mentioned, speed, right? Velocity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can understand that sometimes companies, we don't have the experience and we are not so sure and so on and so forth. I mean, it's easy to try. You just run a proof of concept. You talk to your agency and say, okay, let's try it. 3 months. We built something together with agencies in Europe. We should talk about it. We offer now our new clients a so-called 3+3 package, an accelerator package. This 3+3 is a collaboration of 6 months. It's optional. So you have 3 months in which, in collaboration with an agency, we tackle all the low-hanging fruits. So in the first 3 months, we want to create a lift that pays everything. That is our goal, right? And in the second 3 months, the intention is that it's not like building more tests and experiments. The second one is that the agency enables the team and creates the processes inside the company so that actually they get up to speed with everything it takes inside, right? Some agencies didn't want to do it because they said, no, we don't want to do the business. But I think it's a wrong decision. I think it should always be a really strong team, and then the agency comes in and adds value in the further flow of the project.
I agree 100%. Definitely, we need to talk more about that, Jan.
Yeah.
So, Jan, we talked about, and actually how you maybe consciously or unconsciously structure it. We talked about the processes. We talked about the team. And you, at the beginning, you mentioned the tools, right? And there's where Visual Website Optimizer and other such as Visual Website Optimizers come in. And I would like to hear from you, like, what are the difference? What a merchant needs to look for in a tool, right? What are the differences between the tools? And that's one question. And I want to add another part to the question about like what to look into the tools. It's about performance. Because we know Visual Website Optimizer and we know how good it is for performance, but some other tools like really, really affect website performance that ironically decreases your conversion rates, right?
Yes, it can do. Yeah. Well, we've been, very often we are part of an evaluation process where our future client evaluates us against Google Optimize. It's free of charge to a certain extent, and A/B Tasty and Optimizely, Chameleon, and so on. So first of all, these are all good tools, right? So they have things in common. Would be surprising if not, right? We had very often as an agency, I was often asked to compare them and help our client make a conscious decision, which is the right tool for him, right? So what were the main characteristics and the reasons why VWO became our favorite tool in a certain way? So number one was not in the technology. It was in the service approach of the company. So it's when somebody gives you, let's say, just a software account and a support ticket machine, right? So just, if you have problems, send us a ticket, right? So that is right the opposite of the way we deal with it. As I said, we engage with the success manager, and the success manager is not a support manager. It is a co-pilot. It is someone that challenges the way you do things. He comes up with ideas. He is someone to speak to and to get the ball rolling as quickly as possible and as fast as possible. And that is number one. And we saw a big difference there. So there are some of our beloved competitors. Either Google doesn't offer any service at all. You have to browse the knowledge base. And other competitors, they sell service in a certain way. So it's very limited. And I think the reason why this is, we are a bootstrap company. It's still run and managed by the founders. And the growth that VWO is achieving is mainly through customer happiness. So they are totally fanatic about customer happiness and growth from inside as well, and word to mouth. So that's number one, I think. And as an agency, it helped us a lot as well, because it allowed us to really get up to speed. They always came up with additional resources whenever they were acquired and so on. So number two, talking about the technology itself, is ease of use. I think the name, our original company name, I think we hardly use it any longer. VWO, in Spanish, by the way, it's terrible. I think in Latin America it's different. No, how would you pronounce VWO in Spanish?
VWO.
Say again, slowly.
VWO.
WO.
No es W.
Yeah. See, even that. So there are two Spanish terms, right? Terrible. Anyway, there is the ease of use was always already part of the idea. Visual website optimizer. So the visual is there is a very strong front end editor. You can do a lot of things very easily, right? Someone who is a programmer who will not make too much use of the front end editor, maybe. But a lot of marketeers and a lot of analysts and a lot of product owners, and copywriters and so on, they use VWO in many tiny little things. And the ease of use leads to speed, because you don't have to think about it. You have a good idea, you write down your hypotheses, and then you implement it using the front-end editor, and then you hit the start button and you see the data coming in. So the ease of use, I think, is something that secures that you don't make every experiment a project. And this creates, let's say, the possibility to run 10, 20 or more tests every month. That was the second thing. The third one you already mentioned. It's the impact on performance. That's a sensitive subject, because basically all technology vendors say there's no impact in performance. That's a lie. The moment you put a JavaScript on your page, it impacts your performance. But the question is, how much? And we've analyzed that quite deeply. In my former role, we compared the top 5 tools against each other on the same website, a really big hotel brand. They asked us to compare different performance indicators with the same set of experiments, but with different tools. And we learned 2 things from it. As long as you don't test too much, you have 1 or 2 experiments running at the same time, there's not a big difference, and you will hardly notice it. So there is nothing that could damage your performance seriously, right? But the moment that you scale up things and you run 3, 4, 5 experiments, suddenly there was a huge difference in it. Please do not ask me why. I can only say the way I always explain it. I assume that our JavaScript is slightly smarter, so it just loads things the way at the right moment, the right way, so that it does not get into the way of anything else. And also when you run several tests on a page, does not mean that you always have to have all components already loaded. And we have done a number of migrations only because of that, from large platforms, very expensive platforms, to VWO only for the sake of scalable experimentation. Yeah, that's an important part. But for the sake of clarity, very often the problem in performance is not problem of the platform. It is because of what you do with it, right? Very often, whatever the platform might be, even so, you can even mess things up with VWO. You build an experiment, and within this experiment, you let's say you ping another system and pick some data from there, and this is a process, and then this suddenly impacts. So suddenly you get stuck, and it impacts your performance tremendously. But it's the fault of the bad integration.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So Jan, there's many other topics to cover, but time flies. Well, I would like to maybe for another podcast episode, I would like to. You started the conversation talking about, and something that really relates to how I think about conversion rate optimization is flipping the coin. From 100 people that comes to your site, 98, 99 won't buy. I would like to add, won't buy yet, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that they're trying to look for, right? We call it the top tasks, right? They come to look for information, they're trying to look for pricing, comparisons, right? So knowing that, it's very important because you need to give it to them if you're planning for them to come back. So that's just one of those. Also, I would like to maybe in another episode cover different experiments. Personally, I love the counterintuitive experiments, the ones that you do just because you want to do them, because you think those won't work, and all of a sudden they're a hit, right? And I'm sure that you have many examples. So let's look everyone to come back to the next episode. But we need to come to an end in this episode, Jan. It was an absolute pleasure to talk about this with you. You clearly know a lot about conversion rate optimization, and you're very good at explaining things. So thank you very, very much. Can you tell our audience where they can find you, or where they can get in touch?
Absolutely. If you want to know more about us or about the experiences, or you want to have us, let us have a look at your website and talk about your aid experiences, just drop an email to jan@vwo.com, and happy to respond and to meet you in Google Meet and have a chat about how we can create better digital experiences in your channel.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Jan. So
thank you
very much. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on Spotify and all of our socials. We'll leave, as always, all of the relevant links in the description below. Thanks for watching. I'm Diego Praderi, and this is The Link. Bye-bye.